The whole history of America is the history of rich white men telling not rich white people that their enemies are black and brown. It starts in the colonies of what would become the United States. Let's remember, during the colonial period, mid-1600s, there was no such thing as white people. I know some people who are now called white find that shocking, right? Because they think whiteness is real, right? But whiteness was created. Europeans didn't call themselves white. We didn't call ourselves white. We weren't all members of one big happy family. Are you kidding? Have you studied the history of Europe? The history of Europe was about killing each other. That's what we did in Europe. We just killed each other before we figured out there were other people to kill. We just killed each other, right? I mean, that was the history of Europe. The English hated the Irish, right? Northern Italians didn't even think that Southern Italians were Italians. The Germans hated everybody, and everybody hated their ass right back, right? There was no team called white, no race called white, but all of a sudden, in the middle of the 1600s, there was. Why? Why was it suddenly necessary to create this thing called the white race? Well, because rich people can count, that's why. And so rich folks looked around, the ones that owned all the land, you know, in the colonies, the colonial elite looked around and they realized something, that they were heavily outnumbered by African enslaved folks, by European indentured servants, who were just one level above a slave, or other Europeans who weren't technically indentured servants, but they were still peasants, didn't have any money, didn't have any land, and they could do the math. They added it up. And
does it, but instead of accepting it, you guys lie to yourself. And then once again, 2020, oh no, it was rigged. Did you see Martin Luther King go to violence? Rosa Parks, John Lewis? But the white man lost an election and they believe the lie, so they get away with beating officers with American flagpoles. They're patriots, but if you kneel before a flag peacefully, you're a son of a bitch. Funny how that works. Make America white again. Until we deal with this, we will never get out of this. And if it has to burn to the ground, then so be it. Because this is why we're here. This is the only reason we're here. And if you want to go back to the economics part, that's cool. But go look at the Hurricane Katrina documentary. You know what happened? Certain parts, when they were rebuilt after the flooding, they were primarily black. You know what happened? The white man raised the rent by 2 and 3 times. What do you think happened to those black communities? Oh yeah, I'll let you know. Spoiler alert, it turned to a white community. Why? Because they didn't want to pay black people a fair wage. So when you say, I don't have privilege, fuck off. Have you had to give a talk to your kid? Have you had your house redlined? Was your house valued more? Were you called the N-word? Did you have to give your kid the talk? Then fuck off with your white privilege. Just because you're poor doesn't mean you don't have privilege. It means that you're treated differently than everybody else. That's what white privilege is. And you can shove it up your ass. Have a white day.
Jim Crow, white men. Slavery, white men. Segregation, white men. Concentration camps for Asian Americans in the late 30s and early 40s. 1,800 people died. How many black people were hung from trees? 8,000. Let me guess. Oh yeah, once again, white men. The gun violence? 98% are men. 84% are white men. U.S. citizens. I see a trend. How about the Middle Passage where 1.2 African Americans died? Oh yeah, once again, white men. Why was the Second Amendment written? Let me think. So black people couldn't have their freedoms. So the white men could once again control them. Who's in the White House? An adjudicated rapist, convicted felon white man. Wow, I see a trend. But somehow Americans are just begging to blame a trans person, a non-white person. See, what happened to George Floyd is symbolic of what's happening in this country. The white man putting his knee on the neck of a non-white person and sitting there in broad daylight with the balls to say, who's going to stop me? And that's what we're seeing right now. So that's the question that we need to ask ourselves as a fucking country. Who's going to stop them? Because I'm just one person here. Now, I don't know about you, but I got friends and family that are sitting behind the white privilege, and I want nothing to do with them. Not because of who they are, because their lack of action. Martin Luther King said, history is going to remember not the people that did bad things, but the good people that stood by and did nothing.
Never forget that the United States was built on stolen land with stolen people who were massacred and brutalized. All of this that is happening right now is a direct response to white people being pissed off that this country elected a black man to be president, not once, but twice. And he was and still is beloved. This is an inherently racist country. And until we face that, admit that, and dismantle it, we're going to keep having these problems.
I live in rural Arkansas. And if you don't understand why people in rural Arkansas or rural America vote Republican, it's because of fear and jealousy. Jealousy that somebody has it better than they do, that they work their asses off, and most of them do. More education, because the education here is at the bottom of the tier. Maternal mortality, low. Education, low. Quality of living, low. Infrastructure, super low. There's no industry, there's no hope for these young kids in rural Arkansas to have a job. We had a chance to vote Chris Jones, an actual rocket scientist like myself who was educated and had a plan to bring jobs and infrastructure to Arkansas. But the people I talked to who in rural Arkansas will not vote for him because of his color of his skin. And they weren't nice when they described the color of his skin. So they voted for a sycophant, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, who is treating this like her personal money bank. There is no infrastructure here. The roads are shit. You can drive 2 hours. So my closest grocery store, besides Walmart, is 2 hours away. So if I go that 2 hours to go to that grocery store, the roads I have to take are barely have enough room for two people to pass each other. There is no cell phone coverage for over an hour and a half of that ride. And there's no hope to get those roads fixed anytime soon because there's no money. I say that, but lo and behold, what did Sarah do as of July of 2025? She has loaned and bought $55 million worth of Israeli bonds. So she's loaned Israel $55 million with a catch to give them $100 more million by the end of the year. When her people are fucking starving, they have no medical care. Hell, most teenage girls here are living at home pregnant with their moms. And they're living at home with their moms and their boyfriends. Because that's how rural America lives. There's nothing for these kids to look forward to. So why would they ever vote Republican? Because that's what they're told to do. $150 million would go a long way to feed, get medical attention, and up our so that our children here in Arkansas don't die in infancy and the mothers don't die in childbirth. And that is rural America. Fuck Sarah Huckabee Sanders. She is the worst governor at, okay, she's second. Our neighbor Texas Abbott is worse, but she's a close second.
White culture, if you could even call it culture, is based in racism. It was a narrative created by colonizers, like my Portuguese ancestors, in order to justify what they were doing to other people on the continent of Africa and even here in North America. And the narrative was that we white people were better than all other races. And they did so through Christianity. They took the Bible and different scripture verses, twisted it around in order to fit the narrative of colonialism and white supremacy, and also the patriarchy. And the patriarchy is white man in power. White supremacy is white man in power. Colonialism is white man in power. And Christianity, for the most part nowadays, is white man in power. There are historical references and proof where the Catholic Church actually said to enslave an African was to save their soul. The kidnapped and enslaved Africans that were here in North America were preached different scripture verses than were actually in the Bible. And that's why they weren't allowed to read. Because if they could read, then they could see that these scripture verses were incorrect and they couldn't be controlled anymore by this white God. And white people, we didn't identify as white until colonialism. We identified as Portuguese, or Latvian, or German, or Italian, or French. But then colonialism came around, and then all of a sudden we became white, and we were superior, because we were the chosen race by God, and the scripture verses proved it. And we had to go into other people's lands and preach the gospel, when really it was all a ruse. It was all an excuse to go in and rape and pillage the land and the people and the cultures. So when I say that white culture is based in racism, it's based in racism. Christianity was the Trojan horse of white supremacy and colonialism. And Western Christianity, as we know today, is still based within superiority. All Christians think that they're better than everybody else. I grew up in it. I'm very familiar with the culture. And it's part of the problem. There's a reason why most of Trump supporters are Christians. It's because they don't even realize that the conditioning of colonialism and Christianity and the patriarchy is so deeply embedded within them and their identity that they don't even see the truth. Christianity is based in superiority, in white superiority, in white culture, which is all based in racism.
Welcome to America. Tell me what you're thinking.
Just so much.
Kleenexes, please.
I've always been interested in history and the history of black people. I took Afrocentric classes at U of L. My grandma lived at 2821 West Kentucky Street. I've read so many books, and now I belong to a church that's primarily African American, and I wouldn't be anywhere else.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Obviously, in my opinion, and this is just me, I feel like so many people are so brainwashed as it relates to racism that they're willing to sacrifice themselves in order to uphold this racist type of agenda, this white supremacy ideology. And I can only hope and pray that people realize that white supremacy, racism, it's so expensive, and it is costing us and others that are still upholding it their livelihoods, their way of living and being. Like, at what point are you going to realize, hey, okay, I probably didn't get this one right. Maybe I should consider what's happening in, me, right? My internal beliefs and everything, and really start working through that, because I am actually causing more harm than good, not just to myself, but people across the country, right?
Hey everybody, so I've been seeing a lot of progressives say that soon Trump supporters will get what they voted for and they will realize, oops, that was a bad idea, and then they will change. I hope that these progressives are right, but I have my doubts. Because it neglects a major part of what America is and has always been. In the United States, the wealthy elite and powerful politicians have been able to unite themselves together by using racism in order to pit the white working class and white poor people against black people. We see this pattern as early as 1676 with Bacon's Rebellion. Bacon's Rebellion united poor white people and black people in an effort to make life better for themselves. During this time, many poor white people were indentured servants. They had legal protection, but they were often treated like black slaves. As Michelle Alexander tells us in The New Jim Crow, the wealthy elite abandoned their reliance on indentured servitude in favor of bringing more black slaves. This gave poor white people just a little bit more dignity, and more important, it allowed them to think, well, my life might be really bad, but at least I'm not like black slaves. This has been the pattern of racism in the United States throughout our history. We see this in the 1800s with slavery. After the Civil War, there's a bit of hope during the age of Reconstruction when poor white people and black people begin to work together. But soon the wealthy elite and powerful politicians do their thing once again and pit poor white people against black people. And this is exactly what is happening today. And we are seeing this today as Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk are supporting Donald Trump as he overtly unites poor people and working class people against immigrants. So I'm afraid that we are all going to get what Trump supporters voted for, which, if he enacts his policies, is going to be an economic disaster. So Trump supporters may say, yeah, life is hard for us, but at least we're not like those immigrants. At least we don't have it as bad as black people. Now, it would be easy for us to start blaming Trump supporters, but that's exactly what Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, and Donald Trump want us to do. They want us to be so busy blaming one another that we don't find the real problem, which is the wealthy elite and the powerful politicians. And so we have to start finding ways to stop fighting each other, because that is exactly what the white, wealthy elite and powerful politicians want us to do. Jesus never says that the problem was with immigrants or with black people. Jesus says that the real problem is with wealth. He says that it is easier for a camel to walk through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to get into heaven. But we are too consumed with blaming immigrants that we forget what Jesus actually said, that the problem is with extreme wealth and greed for power. God bless.
So there were 452 illegals apprehended at the Hyundai mega plant construction site yesterday near Savannah. And I was the one that reported the information that I had to ICE. But it goes beyond just someone working illegally. Let me explain to you. These people are working for slave wages. Some are not getting paid. Some are being trafficked. They send money home to their country. They give money to their handler.
I think by now we've all heard this woman talk about how she's reported over 400 people to ICE, and it was the largest scale ICE raid in history that we know about, most of them Korean nationals. And I thought that I would lend my kind of expertise as someone that has been in industrial distribution and industrial manufacturing, a lot of auto manufacturing particularly, to lend some understanding to people, to let you know why this is so egregious and how this is going to impact Southeast Georgia directly. Whenever a foreign company like Hyundai, Toyota, Volvo, Volkswagen come and build a plant in America, all of the equipment, all the parts that go into building the car itself are from that country of origin, in this case, Korean. And so whenever you build a plant, you bring engineers and setup crews from your country of origin that help set up the equipment to make sure that it runs efficiently, but also training American workers to maintain it, to operate it, and make sure that they know what to do in case of failure or downtime. And most of the time, these engineers are on visas. They don't get paid by American companies. They get paid directly by Hyundai, which is a Korean company. And so their job is to train American workers, and that sometimes takes years to do. There's a large Volvo plant in North Charleston that was a large account of mine a couple of years ago, and I helped open that plant. It took 3 years to do so. Swedish engineers were there for years to train American workers to ensure that they were operating efficiently. And so calling ICE on this plant is not only, it's going to delay it at best years or cancel it altogether. It's going to make foreign companies very nervous to invest in America if our immigration policies continue the way that they are. There's also a large impact to support businesses. So whenever you have an auto manufacturing plant, you have support businesses that support these plants. So they don't make everything at this plant. They might outsource the seats or the chassis or certain power transmission products at local businesses that make them down the street and bring them in. All of those businesses are going to be impacted. I don't think this woman understands the impact of the racist decision that she made. Rather than calling OSHA if she was worried about the work conditions or their pay or how they're treated, she called ICE. And we saw now that the Korean government is not going to trust our government to treat their citizens with respect and dignity. So they have chartered planes to take them back to Korea. If I lived in Southeast Georgia, I would be pissed, because this is going to either delay it years or cancel it altogether. 8,600 jobs that this plant directly impacts to the community, but just think of the wave and resonance of all the other impacts of the local economy.